Okay, thank you very much for inviting me to talk. I chose this subject, Zeppelins and the Americas, so that I could look at my own collection and see what do I really have in my Zeppelin mail that relates to both all of the continent, North America, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. And so it was enlightening for me to take a look at what I have. And then, of course, right away you find out your gaps at the same time. So I hope I'll have a little bit of something of interest for everyone. I'm presenting this as kind of an introduction overview, so it won't go into a lot of detail in any one area, but more be encompassing the story. One thing I like about being a Zeppelin collector is we actually collect the world. When you think of all the countries that dispatch to Zeppelin Post and all the countries that are destinations, we end up being worldwide collectors. And so that's just an enriching element to the Zeppelin side of collecting. So what I am talking about today are the two German Zeppelins. I'm not talking about American airships and Zeppelins or British airships, but rather the two Germans, the Graf Zeppelin and the Hindenburg. And I'm going to take a look at mail from their flights to the Americas only. And so for the Graf Zeppelin, first of all, in case there's anyone who doesn't know what a Zeppelin is, it's a flying aircraft. There's a metal framework. Inside there are bags of either helium or hydrogen, in this case hydrogen, and then the framework is covered by an outer fabric. And then at the bottom, there's a gondola where the officers would control the ship. They carry passengers, freight, and mail, so they're definitely competing with sea ships. So if we look at the Graf Zeppelin, it actually flew 590 flights without any loss of life. The Hindenburg only flew 63 flights and ended in disaster, which I will talk about a little at the end of the talk. The Graf Zeppelin was 776 feet long. Hindenburg was a little larger at 803. So for those of you who are soccer fans, this is almost like putting three soccer fields end to end. So it gives you a sense of how huge these aircraft really are. So the Graf Zeppelin flew first, 1928 to 1937, and it started out with demonstration flights and ended up moving toward commercial service. The Hindenburg was built for commercial service, and that was its primary role, other than some domestic flights. And so I will take a walk through all these flights, and not every single one when there's many going to the same place. I'll just do representation. But the idea is that you have a sense of how these were operating as the first commercial service across the Atlantic to the North and South continents. So there are three types of Zeppelin mail that people collect. One is the country dispatch. The other could be the transit markings or the destinations. So no matter what country you might collect, you could look for all three of those. Not everybody collects by country. Some collect by ship or even just a single flight. And there are different kinds of mail carried. So first you have commercial mail. This could be business mail. There were a lot of bank mail between Brazil and Germany. Advertising mail, different companies would send to clients or other businesses. Family correspondence, and then passenger and crew mail with the onboard post office. And then you have the philatelic mail, dealer mail, agent mail, and collector mail. And by the time we're done, you should see something from all of these kinds of mail. There are some people that criticize philatelic mail, but in fact, at the FIP level, there are many cases where there's no commercial mail available on a flight, and then you cannot be criticized for showing philatelic representation. So, why are German Zeppelins flying to the Americas? Well, because in the 1800s and 1900s, a lot of German people moved to the Americas, both North and South America. So in Europe, the very dark country is Germany. And then when you look at the Americas, you can see the United States and Brazil very strongly represented, Argentina and Canada as well, and other countries. So there are Germans throughout this area. And this gives you a basic idea of the route going across the South Atlantic and North Atlantic. They would plan their route so that they would fly over islands, and that gave a little extra, not only security, but remember, they didn't have radar at this time, and so they're flying by sight. And so having the destination of islands is a reinforcement along the way. From Germany, the Graf Zeppelin flew out of Friedrichshafen in the south of Germany, and the Hindenburg flew most of its flights out of Frankfurt, which was in the middle of the country. There were stops in Seville, Spain at times, because that could be a refueling point. In South America, they went to Recife and Pernambuco and to Rio de Janeiro. And in the United States, the main port was Lakehurst, New Jersey, which was just south of New York City. But then on the Chicago flight, it also stopped in Miami, Akron, Chicago. On the world flight, it stopped in Los Angeles. So this is the basic route you're looking at here for the only two of the flights went between Brazil and the United States. All the rest were strictly across the Atlantic round trip. There are some flights also from the Gambia in Africa, and I'll show you an example of one of those. So why are we flying across the Atlantic? Of course, to serve the population, to serve all the businesses. Germany invested a lot of money in business, both in the United States and South America. So it was connection for all of that. But the fact is, at the time the Zeppelins were flying, and we're looking at a small window here of time, just a decade or more, airplanes couldn't fly nonstop across the Atlantic with a payload of passengers, freight, and mail. Zeppelins were the only aircraft that could do that. And the idea was they would fly the long distances, and as they reached each place, they would be like a hub where they would connect to all the feeder airlines. So, of course, in South America, you had SCADA and you had a lot of other local airlines that could connect and deliver mail to all the different countries. Um, you know, why were Zeppelins so important when it was such a small time frame? Well, as I said, they could fly when airplanes couldn't, but they were also much faster than ship mail. So they could fly in about half of the time that a ship would. So to go to North America, they could do it in under 2.5 days. To fly to Recife, they could do it in 3 to 4 days, depending on weather. They established the air routes that airplanes would use later on. And both the Hindenburg and the Graf Zeppelin established the first scheduled passenger and mail service by air to North America and South America. So they have a significance level that is really makes it an exciting area to collect. So I've divided the talk into the two ships and where they went. And so first I'm going to show you some examples of the Graf Zeppelin flying to North America. It was ready to fly in 1928, and very quickly, it's after some local flights, its first flight was to North America. Here it is in the hangar at Lakehurst, New Jersey in 1928. And that very first flight, we call the first North America flight. It was a round trip. And this is a return from the United States to go back. And you can see this took from October 11th to November 1st, because in the earliest days of these flights, they spent quite a bit of time at the hub or at the port so that they could repair the ship, they could prepare to fly back. By the time 6 years later, 7 years later, they had a turnaround of just a couple hours instead of several days. On this particular flight, they had ran into some storms and they had severe tears in the tail section. So they had some major repair work to do, which is why it extended the time before it flew back. By the way, if you look at the rate, 50 cents is the Zeppelin rate. 3 cents is the United States normal foreign surface mail rate. So in almost all cases, you have an international rate, whether it's postcard, letter, or so forth, and then a Zeppelin fee. And sometimes there was negotiation where they would be combined into a single rate, and we'll see examples of that later too. The next flight was to North America, and it actually left in May. But if you look at this card, and right down the middle, next to the printed bar, you see like a red line of text. That's telling you that this flight was interrupted. So it started out to fly to Lakehurst and had engine trouble and had to come down in France and have some minor repair just to limp back home. And then it couldn't resume the flight until August. And the post office, rather than taking all that mail and just sending it by sea mail, held it all. So they held it from May until August and then delivered it. So we call this an interrupted flight. And this one happens to be addressed to a pilot, a SCADA pilot in Colombia, and it was sent by a man who worked, an official for an aviation firm in Berlin. That flight, that interrupted flight, arrived in the United States in order to begin the round the world flight. And the round the world flight actually flew around the world 1.5 times because the United States required the funder, which happened to be the Hearst newspapers, required the flight to begin in the United States and end in the United States. But the Germans considered the world flight beginning in Germany and ending in Germany. So it actually had to fly 1.5 times around the world to do a world flight. This is actually the scarcest leg, Los Angeles, Lakehurst to Los Angeles. And they have different rates for every single leg. So almost all these major Zeppelin flights, you can find mail. If you're looking at leaving Friedrichshafen, Germany, you can find it going to every single place the ship landed. And from every place it landed, it picked up mail to go to every other destination yet to come. So on one flight, like the world flight, you can have so many different destinations with different rates and mail from so many different countries. And this is an example of a card that is postmarked or cached at every stop along the route, or every country along the route, as it stopped in Japan and after it left Germany, and then came back to the United States and then ended up in Germany again. So next I want to look at the Graf Zeppelin on flights that went to both South and North America. And there are 2 of those flights. There's the Pan American flight of 1930 and the Chicago flight of 1933. This is the only German Zeppelin mooring mast in the world that still exists. It's in Recife and Pernambuco in Brazil. It's on my bucket list. I just have to live a long life until I can get there. I need to see this thing. I need to touch it. So that's one of my big dreams in life, is to get down there to see this. So first I want to look at the Pan American flight in 1930, from Germany to Brazil to the United States and back to Germany. So this is what we call onboard mail. If you look at the postmark on the stamp, it says Luftschiff Graf Zeppelin. That means Zeppelin by name, with the date of the flight. The date is canceled on board the ship. So the ship, the Graf Zeppelin in Hindenburg, actually had flying post offices on board. You could buy stamps, you could get postmarks, and they would dispatch the mail from there. They did not do registered mail on board. You can see the postage stamp is also an overprint, especially for this flight. Several countries put out special postage stamps for this major flight. This card is sent from passengers and crew on board, signed by two crew members that I know, Hans von Schiller and Hans Fleming. And so that's one of my passions is collecting mail written by passengers and crew members. This is an example again of a piece of mail that was marked in each country that it went to on this flight. So we have Germany to Brazil to the United States, and then a stop in Seville, Spain on the way back home. Another example on this flight from Nicaragua. This, if you look at the directional marking, it says via Graf Zeppelin from Havana to Lakehurst, and they crossed out Havana and put to Friedrichshafen, Lakehurst to Friedrichshafen. The reason for this is originally they had intended to drop mail in Havana, but because of weather, they had to reroute and did not fly over Cuba. So all the mail destined for that drop in Cuba went to Lakehurst, and then at the New York Post Office, it was all rerouted. And this is a nice dual franking. The Nicaraguan postage was going to pay to get it to Cuba, and then the U.S. stamp is added later to get it from Lakehurst to Friedrichshafen. Here's another one that was supposed to be dropped in Cuba to Haiti and from Uruguay, and it didn't make it. Oh, there was one thing I wanted to point out, the cachets. I'm going to go back one. Here, look at that cachet, that diamond cachet that's got the map. And see how this one has the route Lakehurst to Seville? That's because that's the route that this mail was carried on the Zeppelin, on this part of the route. Now, if you look at the next one, this one is listed as a cachet of having flown the entire route. Now, it didn't. It didn't fly from Germany to Uruguay, but it's the two cachet varieties they had, and they used the one that was closest to what they needed at the moment. So this went all the way to New York and then was rerouted back to Cuba and Haiti from there. And here's in Argentina. You can see they had a special overprint stamp as well, set for this flight. And Argentina is one right now, one of the strong areas of Zeppelin collecting. You know, in my field, I've been collecting Zeppelin mail over 50 years, and I've seen different areas go very strong, and then other areas have less interest. And right now, Argentina is one of the strong countries to collect. And then the United States put out 3 postage stamps for this flight. How that worked with this is a first day cover for that. And the first day was before the flight left Germany. So this is postmarked in Washington, D.C. It goes up to New York. Then it went on a ship to Germany. From the ship, it probably went by train to get to Friedrichshafen, put on the Zeppelin, flew to South America, flew to North America, flew back to Germany. In the upper left corner, you can see it said this made the complete trip. And then from Germany, it came back to the United States by sea mail. So a lot of transport. 2 trips across the ocean by ship and 2 trips across the ocean by Zeppelin. Now I'm going to move on to the Chicago flight. That was 1933, 3 years later. Strong German population in the city of Chicago. And they had been very disappointed on the first 2 flights to the United States by the Graf Zeppelin that there was no visit to Chicago. That on a around the world flight, the Graf Zeppelin did fly over Chicago. So the planning committee of the Chicago World's Fair wrote in advance to Eckner and invited him to bring the Zeppelin to the Chicago World's Fair. And they made that agreement to take a regular South American final trip of the season and do an extension to go up to Chicago to see the World's Fair. And here you can see there's an overprint on this postage stamp for that special exhibition. It's postmarked on board. And this is sent by Herman Doher. He was originally born in Germany, but became a citizen of Mexico. He flew on this flight with his family to the United States from South America. Um, he also took his family on the final flight to the Hindenburg from Germany to the United States, and he died in that disaster, as well as one of his children, his daughter. His wife injured her hip jumping out of the Zeppelin, and she threw the two little boys out the window to be caught by crew members below, and they were saved. But Herman didn't make it. But twice took his family aboard, so he believed it was a safe way to travel and the fast way to travel. Fun always to find different types of postage rates. This is a sample packet, and I've got several sample packets carried from Brazil to the United States. And we were just earlier talking about wonderful coffee of South America, and frequently they would carry coffee beans in these sample packets. So I have a few of those in my collection. You'll find several cases of dual franking on the Chicago flight of countries. Here we have from Cuba and Central America, I mean, from the Caribbean and Central America. And that's because they put on their local postage to fly the mail to the United States. And usually foreign airmail routes landed in Miami, and then from there they had another plane that took it up to New York. And then once it was in the United States, whether in Miami or Akron or Chicago, then they had the United States postage stamp to fly it on one or more of the legs on the flight. So you get the dual type. This one you could see went to Seville, Spain, which is one of the scarcer destinations on that flight. Here we have a Nicaragua combination and an inverted overprint. I imagine these are pretty philatelic, but gee, sure fun, sure fun. And down below on several of these, I've listed rates. Rates are really tough because there's no book that gives all the Zeppelin rates, and Zeppelin rates aren't always a published rate. So when you have countries where you only maybe have a handful of covers, there is no postal rate that was announced. Instead, you have to look at what was the international rate, what was probably the equivalent to if you look at your currency, to the equivalent to the Zeppelin rate. And then, of course, when they're registered, you can figure out the registration rate. And when I've had a cover where I have a difficult time figuring out a rate, I will often write to members of a specialized society, and they will look at my cover and be able to figure out routing and rates in ways I haven't been able to. And so that's been a fun way that I've built friendships in different countries just by corresponding over trying to figure these things out. And here we have Paraguay. Paraguay put out quite a few Zeppelin stamps over the years and had very colorful cancels and cachets. And the nice thing, registered mail, is it makes it easy with the back stamps to trace the route. And then this one, you even have a airmail label that is giving you directional marking. So there are airmail labels from several countries, especially Brazil in the Americas. And you got to be careful. Not all Zeppelin use is flown. This is one to Peru, used 2 years after the flight, but it is not flown by a Zeppelin. It's just using the Zeppelin as postage, which was legal to do. I found this Zeppelin stamp used on mail across the Pacific and on airmail to South America. This is a Palestine dispatch to Chile. Again, registration makes it easy to figure out that this, in order to get to Germany, it went first to London, England, then it flew to Berlin. From Berlin, it flew to Friedrichshafen. Then it flew on the Zeppelin to South America. Of course, it went to Rio and then would have had a local flight on to Chile. Next section, I'm going to look at South America by Graf Zeppelin. So it's only to South America. So far I've done to North America by Graf Zeppelin and to both North and South America. Now I'm looking at only South America by Graf Zeppelin. I'll get myself caught up on my notes here. I was just talking from my head and don't want to miss something. Okay. Okay, so here we have onboard mail. I want you to take a look at this postmark. In the early onboard mail, this is 1933, it just said airship Graf Zeppelin and gave the date. Then you have a green cachet, happens to have stamps from both Brazil and Germany. But there, this is really a special cover, and I'm going to explain why. You see that Ocean brief, that typewritten in the kind of center top of the cover. This cover was this message inside this cover came from a ship mid-Atlantic. So while Graf Zeppelin is going to Brazil, a ship is leaving South America, but they have a passenger who wants a message to go back from where it came. So they radio telegram the Zeppelin. The telegram operator takes the message, puts it in a Zeppelin envelope, postmarks it on the Zeppelin, and when they arrive in Brazil, they dispatch it. These ocean briefs are incredibly difficult to find. I did a census on them, and we are looking at only a few dozen of them exist. So they're highly sought after. You can't just take a cover that already exists and type in ocean brief and think we're going to be fooled by it. There are other things we have to look for to know if it's a genuine example or not. But truly, one great rarities to find the ocean briefs. Now look at this is also Graf Zeppelin to South America on board, and look at the difference in the postmark. Now we're in 1936. Now it says also Luftschiff Graf Zeppelin, but it also says German airmail, and it identifies from Europe to South America. And why is it making all these changes in the postmark? Because in 1936, you had both the Graf Zeppelin and the Hindenburg flying to South America. So you needed the cancel to distinguish which ship and which route, because the Hindenburg was also flying to North America. So big changes in the postmarks to reflect the changes in the service. This card happens to be sent by one of the crew members, a mechanic. And you can see the postage stamps are Hindenburg Zeppelin postage stamps. I recently found this one on eBay. Just really loved it when I saw it. Does all kinds of things. First of all, it's got a mixed franking with Colombia and Brazil. And all the cachets and postmarks go over all the stamps and stuck on address paper and everything else. So you know it was all there originally. But one of the things I really liked about it was because it goes, and I know I'm going to mispronounce this, Quila, something like that. I'm someone from Colombia in the chat afterwards can tell me how to properly pronounce that. But that town, as anyone who collects Colombian airmail knows, is a key hub for airmail. You had planes coming from many different countries to that point for distribution, and it's a beautiful strike on the back. And this is an example where, with the postmarks, you can exactly follow this route. It went from Cali to Barranquilla and then on to Rio, flew to Rio. But at this time, the Zeppelin didn't fly to Rio, it only went to Recife. So then it had to fly by airplane from Rio to Recife, only to get on the Zeppelin and then fly to Germany. And then you have the back stamp for Germany. So I love when a cover like this has a really fun story and route to follow. There was one flight to Argentina, an extension from a flight to Brazil, and that's in 1934. And if you have any interest in that at all, if you go into YouTube and you type in Graf Zeppelin Argentina Flight 1934, there's a wonderful compilation of film on that flight online. So it's well worth watching if that's something that interests you. And this is a very popular flight to collect. If you look at the photograph of the Zeppelin, you can see on the tail the stripes. This is 1933 and early 34. The Graf Zeppelin flew two flags on its tail, the stripes on one side and the swastika on the other. By the mid 34 to late 34, it had to change. All aircraft in Germany had to change and have the swastika on both sides of the tail. Well, I'm talking in December, and so I thought I better put in something about the Graf Zeppelin Christmas flight to Brazil. At left is a little flyer announcing this special moment. And why is this so special? Well, as I showed you, there are so many Germans in South America that people in the home country back home wanted to send packages. But more than that, this Christmas flight took fresh cut Christmas trees from Germany to South America so that the German residents in Brazil could have real German Christmas trees in their home. And what is really fun is on the return flight, you can see from Uruguay, there's a special dispatch. And the tree, of course, is a palm style tree, the kind of tree that you would have there. And I don't know if any of you went to, I imagine most of you went to the Uruguay 2025 show. I didn't go, but I had a one frame exhibit of Uruguayan agency mail. And when you look at this bottom cover where it says Via Condor Zeppelin, it was required that the Zeppelin mail had to have a directional marking or a directional statement on all mail saying how it was going to be routed by Zeppelin. And the agent in Uruguay who handled Zeppelin mail created several different, what we call agency caches for different flights, exactly 12 of them over a 2 year period. And I had a single frame exhibit on those down at the Uruguay show. It was great fun for me to show a Uruguayan Zeppelin exhibit in Uruguay. And here's another one of those agency caches. And the reason I put this one in is because this one didn't go back to Germany by Zeppelin, even though it's addressed to Germany. It went by Graf Zeppelin on one of the pendulum flights. It only went to Africa. Usually the mail would be dropped in a bag over Gambia, and the Zeppelin would turn around and go right back to Brazil. And then in Gambia, the mail would be put on an airplane and it would fly to Germany from there. And they did this to speed up the flights at a time when they weren't able to use other means to get back and forth. They were doing catapult repair work and so forth. And then they also had at one point a moment of, I'll call, civil unrest in Brazil. And the shuttle flights were also used as a way of getting around that to deliver mail. And now I'm going to talk about the Hindenburg and the flights of the Hindenburg to South America. The Hindenburg was built for the North America route, but the South America route had so much need for more flights to handle all the mail. And so they had both Graf Zeppelin and Hindenburg in 36 and planned from then on to use both ships until the disaster. This hangar is in Santa Cruz in Brazil. It was built because of this service and opened up in mid-1936 for use. Today it's on a military base, but just a glorious structure. This is an example of Brazilian mail going back to Germany. You can see that it's printed on there that it's by Hindenburg, Rio de Janeiro to Friedrichshafen. And this was just, this is philatelic piece, but it's fairly common and routine so that an entry-level collectors or people who just want examples can find this kind of mail very reasonably. Here we have Paraguay. Again, using some of their Zeppelin stamps with overprints, special cancel markings, cachets, attractive. And then here's an onboard example, and you can see in the cancel that it says Airship Hindenburg. This is 1937. There was only one flight to South America by the Hindenburg in 1937. And using the Olympic stamps, which in 1936, if you remember, Berlin had the Olympics. This was sent by Robert Moser. He was a crew member on the Hindenburg. And he did die in the disaster in May. This is mailed in March, so he died just a couple months later on the next transatlantic flight, which was to the U.S. And now I'll talk a little about the last section, and the last section is the Hindenburg going to North America. I love when they make mistakes with the mail. I think we all do. So here, they put on the wrong cachet. They put on the cachet that said to South America. And in fact, it was going to go, even though it's addressed to Rio de Janeiro, it would be faster to send it to North America and then fly it down to Rio. So they would do that. The postal people would look at the schedule. When is the next Zeppelin going to South America? When is the next one going to North America? How we get it there the fastest? I mean, that was the goal, to get it there as fast as you can, because this is commercial mail. People are paying a premium to fly it across the ocean, and they want to get it there as fast as possible. On the first trip to the United States by the Hindenburg, it was in May 1936, it coincided with the International Stamp Show, which was going on in New York City. And so they made a big deal out of the fact that the Hindenburg arrived at the time of the show. It landed at Lakehurst, and then Hugo Echner carried the mail with him, personal U.S. addressed mail, carried it up to the stamp show. They did a big, press presentation of handing over the mail. Echner gave a speech where he thanked stamp collectors because without their sending so much mail, they couldn't have covered the cost of all the operations that they needed in the early days in order to set up the system of Zeppelin transport. So this example was mailed from the show. They actually had a place where you could dispatch mail at the stamp show to go on board the return flight of the Hindenburg. And if you look at the block of 4 on the left, that is a first day postmark. So it was canceled on the first day at the stamp show, and then went down to Lakehurst from New York, put on board the Zeppelin, got the special Lakehurst cachet and the special markings. Other than that, you could see German stamps. It's because the idea is this was supposed to not just go to Germany, this was flying to Germany to then go to Brazil. So it could fly one way on the Hindenburg and the other way on the Graf Zeppelin. Unfortunately, it missed the Graf Zeppelin flight. So it ended up flying twice on the Hindenburg, both for the return flight from New York to Germany, or Lakehurst to Germany, and then by Frankfurt down to Brazil. Here's an example of Canada. So I'm showing some North America mail as well. And actually, Canada had a fair amount of Zeppelin mail. I mean, it was pretty easy to get mail from the Toronto area down to New York. That was just a simple flight or train ride. This one, though, is from Vancouver, which is a little more unusual because now it had to cross the country by airmail in order to get to Lakehurst in time to catch the flight. Mexico had mail on most Hindenburg flights. I happen to have quite a passion for these stamps, airmail stamps that display the antiquity designs. I wrote one of my, I don't remember if he told you in my introduction that my PhD is in history, and my first scholarly book was on Mexican migration to Chicago and how the immigrants in Chicago did pottery artwork. And so I went to Mexico and did a lot of research at the Antiquities Museum there and other sites. Went to several of the Mayan and loved studying Mexican history. So when I look at these stamps, it just warms my heart. And then you also have a fair amount of mail addressed to Mexico at the same time. This one from Switzerland. And what I really found fun on this one is it's addressed to Mr. Tobler. Tobler is a Swiss name, and I'm sure some of you have eaten Toblerone candy. And that I don't necessarily know that this man is a relative, but Tobler's not such a common name. There was a Tobler who was a chocolatier who developed the Toblerone candy bar. You find some mail from the Caribbean on the Hindenburg. It's pretty easy from the Caribbean to go to Miami by flights and then up to New York and go across. But you had to have people who were organizing that mail, and there weren't that many people maybe doing correspondence from these islands. So when you do find Caribbean mail, in this case Stanley Gibbons' addressee, it might be dealer or collector created, but it's all that will exist. And I think this cover here is one of only three known. Now you'll find more Jamaican mail. There might be as many as 8 to 13 on some of the flights. And so that's an example. And sometimes you'll have, as we did on the earlier flights, you'll have dual franking. So in this case, you're going from Haiti to New York to Lakehurst, and then you get the US stamps put on to carry it over to Lakehurst. Here we have Costa Rica, both a dispatch and a destination, and also from that flight. You can see Dr. Eckner's autograph. That was most likely added later because these things would have been in sealed mail bags. They wouldn't have been autographed during the flight unless it was passenger mail. Here's an example of Guatemala. Herman Seeger, the addressee, is a Zeppelin agent dealer. And so you will find mail addressed to him rather frequently. As a collector, I try to upgrade my exhibit and collection and find items that aren't always addressed to dealers and agents, but it isn't always easy. El Salvador mail, also by Hindenburg. You can see in the green marking at the left that it had said June 1935 by mistake, and so then they had to hand correct that to 36. Canal Zone postage. Canal Zone had a fair amount of mail on Graf Zeppelin flights as well. You also can find some Panama mail on these flights. And here we have Venezuela with quite a fancy cachet. And this is Donald Dickinson was a collector dealer as well. One thing that I really love is when I can get auxiliary markings on my Zeppelin mail because it shows a level of postal handling beyond collecting as a style. And so here it's a simple two lines that say, that you'll find the stamps on the other side. And in fact, you do to pay the rate. And this is to Bolivia from Switzerland on the Hindenburg. So in the first trip to North America in 1937, the Hindenburg was totally destroyed. It was a rainy night. The flight was delayed, waiting for clearing. There were thunderstorms in the sky. Passengers who survived said you could see lightning off in the distance. The exact cause is still debated, but what we do know is it takes something that created a spark and something that allowed hydrogen, which was in these cells, gas cells, to escape the cell and mix with oxygen. And if you have a spark with that mixed hydrogen oxygen, then you will have fire. It took only 34 seconds for the entire ship to completely be burned and crash to the ground. And yet, two-thirds of the people survived. And there's a lot of reasons for that. People were standing by the passengers were standing by the windows, waving to the people on the ground, and the windows were very large and they were open. So in 34 seconds, they maybe only had 5 to 10 seconds that they could jump because they had to wait for the ship to get closer to the ground. And then when they jumped, they had to quickly run away because there's burning girders falling all around them. So they did that, and two-thirds made it out. The crew members, if they were a mechanic in one of the engines that were suspended outside the shell of the ship, the mechanics had a good percentage of survival. The officers in the control room in the gondola, a good percentage of those also survived because that was the last part of the ship to burn. So they were trying to control the ship the best they could to the last minute, and then they fled through the windows of that control car as well. Um, the mail was in two locations. So if you look where the gondola was, you can just barely see that little point on the bottom of the ship. There was mail in a storage room in sealed bags just above the gondola. And then there was a small package of mail in the gondola that would be registered and on-board mail that was going to be handed out the window for quick delivery, while the other mail would take a while to be delivered. And then there was a third source, and that was mail in a sealed box that was going to be postmarked on the return flight. So it's mail mostly from Germany, where they said, people sent it in and said, but I want the onboard cancel on the return. So that was about 200 pieces of mail in a sealed container that just happened to be fireproof. And so there are about 200 pieces of surviving mail that are not burned. And they have a packet boat postmark on them, and that's how you can tell which they are. Of the 17,000 or so pieces of mail on the ship, less than 200 survived burnt and in various stages of being burnt. And there was quite a process of documenting them and returning them to their addressees to be sure that they went through the system. And it's, certainly one of the major icons in Zeppelin collecting and Zeppelin history. There are two major catalogs that Zeppelin collectors use. One is the Mickel catalog. They have a specialized Zeppelin and airmail catalog, and they just this year came out with a new edition, and it's several volume catalog, but volume one is all Zeppelin post, and that's the one on the left. And on the right, we have the Zeppelin catalog published by the Seeger Company, and this is a older issue, but there are hopes that a newer edition will come out. At the moment, both of these catalogs are in German. There have been English editions in the past. We're hoping something English might be in the works. So if you're at all interested in learning more about how to collect Zeppelin mail, I'd recommend if you go on YouTube, I did a program called Ways to Collect Zeppelin and Airship Mail, and it just talks about the different approaches people take to collecting. But I would also say we have a Facebook group, if you happen to be on Facebook, called Zeppelin and Airship Collectors. We have over 2,000 followers and quite a few, especially in Brazil. And they're active posting. And we will be involved at the Boston World Show. For those who are going to the show, we'll have several talks. And I already know of several exhibits that we expect to see there. So we're planning a lot of Zeppelin activity at the show as well. And we'll take part in the American Airmail Society booth so that people can find us. And that's it. And then we go to, I think, questions.
Thank you, Cheryl. Very interesting presentation.
Ah,
Any questions or comment for Cheryl?
Yes, I have the city that you were looking from Colombia is Barranquilla.
say it again.
Barranquilla.
Barranquilla.
Yes.
Barranquilla.
Well, many American people say Barranquilla, but it's Barranquilla.
Barranquilla, like a K sound almost. Okay,
Yeah,
Barranquilla. Oh,
Barranquilla.
Barranquilla. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
and that letter is well, the one who sent in those letter is a guy who his name was Joseph Sontag, and he was an employee of SCACTA in Cali, and he sent a lot of letters all around the world with a combined stamp from Colombia and then to many different parts of the world, including the one from Zeppelin. So you see, he is starting in Cali, then he's moving to Barranquilla, who is the hub for SCARA mail around the world, and then probably they flew to United States and then back to with Zeppelin to Brazil.
Yeah.
And you see the address of the letter is Sontag. He was very famous. And it was good because many of the letters or mail who survived, that was because he was a very peculiar man and he sent thousands of letters around the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and when you collect, you start to see mail from the same people over and over again. Like
Yes.
the other one I had earlier one, the Graf Zeppelin that was Columbia related. That fellow was a represented breweries, and I have found other mail from him too. So, I think some people we're very active in using it as an eye-catching means.
Yeah, probably. And the pilot that you mentioned on the slide number
Yeah.
2 was
Yeah.
Hoffman, and he was a famous pilot from SCACTA, and he quit the company. I think before the Second War started. I think he quit SCACTA in 1938, and he went to the south part of Colombia, and he founded an airline over there who flew on the southeast part of Colombia.
Okay.
He was married with a Colombian woman, and he was quite interested in flying in Colombia. And well, he became Colombian. He was not what I say in English. He was not expelled from Colombia during the Second War because he was married with a Colombian woman, so he was able to remain in Colombia.
Yeah.
And finally, he died in Colombia.
Yeah.
It was
Well, he
Hans
saw
Postman.
himself as Colombian. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
But thank you.
Perfect. Paul, you are on mute.
Paul, tu micrófono.
Paul, estás en mute.
Thank you, Cheryl, for your conference today. It was very beautiful, a lot of information. And I was wondering about your terrific accent, because I used to live in Chicago, so for me it's very familiar. Maybe you are across around, from the Chicago area. So I'm happy about your dream going to Pernambuco in order to touch the mooring mast
Yeah.
there. Yeah, so nice history. There is a mooring mast in Lakehurst or not? Or there is
No.
not anymore?
No, there are no mooring masts in the United States. There are a couple mooring masts from
There is no any park or any place in order to.
well, some airships that weren't Zeppelins, like in Norway, has a mast, and a couple other places, but they're not Zeppelins. So the only Zeppelin mast is the one in Brazil. Yeah.
Oh, all right, I got it. I was checking the letter that was for the Swiss guy, this Tobler to Mexico.
Yeah.
There is maybe David know more than me, but the Lomas de Chapultepec is the address of this guy. That place is one of the most expensive areas in Mexico, I think.
Really?
Yes. I would like to let
But
you
that,
know it.
but that street, Ontario Street, it's no longer with that name. I don't know where is it.
Okay.
There are now only the streets have the name of mountains here
Yeah.
in Las Lomas de Chapultepec.
Okay.
It's very close from where I am now.
So congratulations.
Thank you, Paul.
Mauricio.
Thank you, Cheryl, for this wonderful presentation that you have given us today. I have a question regarding that interesting ocean brief cover that you showed us. Just wondering if it was sent from a radio wire from the ship to the Zeppelin and then sent back. Who paid for that postage, or how was it paid?
Yeah, yeah. So the Debeg, D-E-B-E-G, was the radio telegram company in Berlin that provided the equipment on both the ships and the Zeppelins. And all that kind of billing went through them.
Oh, I see.
So there was an added fee over the Zeppelin fee to send that mail. And it would have been charged to the passenger on board who was sending the letter.
Oh, I see.
So if you were on a Zeppelin and you were doing a radio telegram to someplace, they would put that on your account. And then at the end of the flight, if you bought postage stamps and postcards, if you bought a beer in the bar, whatever you spent money during the flight, you would pay at the end. So the passenger is the person who would pay for that.
Oh, interesting. I see.
But all that accounting goes through the Berlin office.
Oh, okay. Another very interesting cover was that one from Nicaragua with the inverted overprint.
Yeah.
Very interesting with yeah. And finally, the explanation of the Havana mail drop, that was interesting. I knew very little about that. Let me share with you a cover that was intended for, sorry, a card that was intended for that mail drop, but it went all the way to the US, and then it was sent back. Well, it was sent back here. So let me show you. I believe I'm sharing it right now.
Oh, that's the Honduras cover. Yeah.
The Honduras, yeah. So yeah, it was according to the instructions via Cuba.
Yeah.
And no Cuba mail drop was made. Yeah, even here by Havana. Yeah, but then it was sent to
So it went from Germany to Brazil.
Yeah.
Back to Lakehurst, and then from Lakehurst, it would have probably gone by airplane from outside New York down to Cuba. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
And then-
stopping in Miami on the way, depending
Yeah.
on what was available on the flights.
And then sent here. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and then were there flights between Cuba and Honduras
Yes,
at the time?
by FAM5, yes.
Yeah,
Through
okay.
Miami,
Yeah.
Havana, Cozumel, yeah, Honduras, yeah.
Good.
But very, very interesting.
Nice piece.
Thanks.
Cheryl, I have a couple of questions. In the initial chart that you put in, you mentioned the Heidelberg and the other one. And between 1931 to 32, I didn't see any flights. However, I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah, there were. I thought, I didn't have them listed. I'm sorry. Yeah, there should have been. I didn't show covers maybe, but I should have had some flights there.
Yeah, maybe I oversaw that.
I got my thing here. Oh yeah, the print's too small for me on my printout to read. Okay.
Perfect. So, and I noticed that the Heidelberg code name was LZ129, right?
Yes, that was the builder number. So it was the 129th design by the Zeppelin company.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it was the 129th built. So for example, there was a 128 that was never finished and built because they changed the plans and moved to the next one. The Graf Zeppelin was 127.
127. Okay, perfect. Because let me share this my screen. There are quite a few Zeppelin covers. Please let me know when you see the screen.
Yes, I see it.
So quite a few mixed covers, Brazil, Peru, that departed Peru to Germany, right? So they have the indication you mentioned here, which is great, by the way, because there are combinations I have found with Bolivia and with Chile.
Yeah.
And they, in addition to the Zeppelin mentioned, they also said through Bolivia, through Chile. So all this, my understanding, flew from Pernambuco to Germany by the LC-127.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, gotcha. And they make quite a few trips also, right? Because there are a
Yeah.
number of these additional cassettes that they were. I haven't found them all, but I have found several ones. I'm assuming this one didn't fly, but like this one, for example, is also 127, I'm assuming.
Yeah. That is also 127. So I don't know if you can find this book, but there was a book by Jim Grau and John Dugan on the South America flights. And
Okay.
I think it's called Commercial Zeppelin Flights to South America. And that one gives so much detail. Jim and John were able to get in the Lufthansa archives and find all kinds of information that had never been published before
Wow.
on these South American flights. And since then, the archive can't find any of these documents, meaning they moved or something, that things have been lost. So the research in Jim's book is literally, a one-shot deal. So it's a paperback book that he wrote and sold maybe about 15, 20 years ago. And if you put a watch on it for eBay or somewhere, maybe you can find a copy. But if you're collecting those South America flights, the details in that book would be very helpful.
Thank you. I didn't know about that book. The only book that I have is this one, and which is, what is it called? By Carl Brewer, and it says With the
Oh.
Zeppelin to South America.
Yeah, and it's more a storytelling book. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It
Yeah.
has a copy of the cassette, but it doesn't tell you much about the philatelic component. So
Right.
that was the
Yeah.
closest I got.
Yeah.
Thank you. And another curiosity question. You mentioned philatelic covers, dealer covers, and real commercial covers. And of course, that one in the ocean brief, we understand are the rarest. But if we were to put that category aside, what would you think would be the rarest covers, especially from the Americans region? Any country in specific or any flight? In your experience as a Zeppelin collector worldwide and
Yeah.
from the Americas, what would be the most or the rarest that we can?
Well, the most common, of course, is Brazil.
Yes.
And then I would say also easy to acquire would be Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay. And so now after that, you're starting to get more and more difficult.
Got it.
But I do, as we have talked, Honduras would be very, very tough. I don't see much Peru. I don't see, I do see Panama, Colombia, Canal Zone areas, but some of the smaller countries, I don't think I've ever seen a Suriname. Some things are just, I'm trying to think, even in Central America, finding a British Honduras would be pretty tough. Some stuff isn't out there.
Good. Just to keep an eye on. We never know.
Keep an eye. And what I do is when I can't find the dispatch material, that's when I go for the destination.
Got it. Okay.
Because those will be a little easier to find. And they also are priced very low, I think, for their rarity.
Mhm.
I mean, I'll find an item with a destination. I got a Zeppelin cover destination Mauritius Island.
Wow.
And, I bought it for a couple $100. Now, if it had been a dispatch, it would have been many thousands of dollars.
Mhm.
So the destinations can be a good way to cover some of the story. You're still getting the transit markings. You're still getting the story of how the airmail worked in and out of the country.
Right. No, that's a very good point. So it's not a trade-off, it's more like an opportunity, right?
Yeah, that's how I see it. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Since
Any
you
other
just
questions
mentioned
or
that,
comments?
sorry, that of for example, a rare destination. For a rare destination, sometimes, for example, in my case, the Honduran covers, you pay a couple of $100 for those, but the ones dispatch from Honduras.
Yeah.
For example, I only have images of those. I haven't actually seen them on an exhibit. I know there should be somewhere, but I only have like say, let me show you this image. I have only once I downloaded the image from an auction house, and
Yeah.
that's the only thing that I have for this one, for example.
Yeah.
And that's really scarce. So I
Yeah.
was thinking, well, if
And then
I
it's
would-
a combination with
yeah,
the US
combination, yeah.
stamp.
Because
Yeah.
it's registered combination and Zeppelin
Yeah.
cover. Yeah, I have to sell the exhibit to get just so no.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I write to a lot of people because I run this Zeppelin group on Facebook.
Yeah.
So I had a guy write to me, and here's a rare one. He said, "How many Falkland Island Zeppelin covers have you seen?" And I go, "None." And he owns 3. I said, "You probably have the only 3 in the world. You've got the monopoly on." So, that's an example of a place that would be very, very hard to find.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, the other one I found really hard is I only seen one on my life. It's in eBay right now. It's like $1,800 from Puerto Rico. And then they flew to New York, and from New York, that's where they took the Zeppelin to Germany.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't think there are that many.
Yeah, because that would have used U.S. stamps from
Correct.
Puerto Rico, but would have the Puerto Rico postmark. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the stamps are not Zeppelin stamp either.
No, no,
And
no.
just the regular, the 12
US
cents.
stamp,
first,
yeah. Yeah, I have seen Puerto Rico dispatch, and I've seen a Hawaii dispatch would be similar in that way also on the Chicago flight. And it's where some collectors created mail and then quickly sent it off to get some exotic sendings. So
Yeah. This one right now is a buy now, and it's like
Yeah.
$1,800 for. I
Yeah.
don't specialize on that area, but I wouldn't mind to get it. But still,
yeah, it seems high, but for the right person, if you were a Puerto Rico specialist and you've never seen it, I guess you bite the bullet. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
definitely. I done that for some other stuff. Yes, like.
Oh, yeah, we all have.
Thank you. It was a very good, Cheryl. Very good.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
I get a question. Yes. Hello?
See that?
Adelante.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yes, there is any chance that somebody, for example, send a correspondence from Los Angeles or California using the Zeppelin company like a transit company, for example, to rare destinations as Russia or Japan from California. Somebody send a letter to Lakehurst and then pick up the Zeppelin to Frankfurt, and then I don't know how, go to Japan or Russia using this part of the world, only the Zeppelin companies transit. There is any
Yeah.
chance that you can find covers to Japan or to Asia or something like destinations, rare destinations?
Yeah, I have in my collection Zeppelin mail that, say it was Hindenburg, would fly from Germany to the US, fly airplane across the country, get on a clipper ship, and go to either Philippines, Japan, or China. I have examples of all of those. And then I also have them going the other way, where they'll go to Australia, so they'll go across the Atlantic and then they'll fly maybe up to London and then go various flights through Southeast Asia and on to Australia. So I have also covers that were flown around the world. This was the Hindenburg was the first time you could send airmail, and you had to contrive it, but you could actually send airmail all the way around the world by different means. Now, it might have to take 5 or 6 different flights, but it was absolutely possible. And these collectors devised ways of folding the envelope. They would pre-stamp each section and then fold it so as it went from post office to post office, it could get stamped and marked and then moved on to the next place. So there was a lot of that kind of conniving going on, but certainly some interesting combinations. We call it combo mail and airmail. Interesting combinations of different kinds of flights together to get things to different places. And in my exhibit that I show internationally, it's called Zeppelins in the United States. So it focuses mostly on the North American routes. But in that exhibit, I do show some of these more exotic ways.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
Would that exhibit be at Boston 2026?
So I applied to have it at Boston, at Ibra, which was a couple years ago. I got a large gold. It's the first Zeppelin exhibit to ever get a large gold.
Congratulations.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm pretty proud of that. Yeah.
Do you also collect like Los Angeles Zeppelin only?
Yeah, I collect it all. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because that's the only one that I know that went to Puerto Rico, went to Mayagüez.
Yeah. And because I do Zeppelins in the United States, I include the US Zeppelins as well. So it's the US Zeppelins and the German Zeppelins in the exhibit. So yeah, I have all of that. Yeah. And on something like the Puerto Rico flight of the Los Angeles, I try to find what I would call the scarcer material, because of course there's a huge bulk of more common covers. But then if you can find mail from the crew or mail between officials,
Yeah.
unusual handling, then I try to show items like that to up the game a little.
Yeah, most of them went to Mayagüez. There's some that went to San Juan. Then,
Yeah.
stop at Mayagüez, obviously, and then went to San Juan. And
Yeah, well, Mayagüez is where it was moored in the harbor.
yeah, that's what it
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah. And what I've never found is from Mayagüez, it made a round trip flight to St. Thomas. And dropped mail at the governor's garden, governor mansion garden. I've never seen a piece of that. I'm assuming it was just official letters to the governor and maybe no private mail at all. But keep looking. You never
You
know.
never know.
You never know. Yeah, exactly. Any other question, comment to close? Nobody. Well, Cheryl, thank you very much. Very
you.
illustrative
Thank you all.
presentation. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. I know some of you are probably classic collectors, and this is way outside what you collect and do. So I appreciate your good questions and your patience and your listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Y con eso y el día de...